The original, well, almost original RetroBlasting camera. Still trucking.
Kind of like this movie.
Kind of like this movie. In 4K, in glorious 4K.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, there's not a flaw in the print. I'm shocked.
But it was a very coveted movie. I think this movie actually ended up in the theater several times.
Oh, I'm sure. Like in those summer re-releases or whatever. Yeah, I can see that. Same year as Star Wars.
That's
77. Don't think it inspired as many toys.
What do you want to know, my son?
No, I mean, what do you do besides drive fast?
Have fun?
Eastbound and Down, load 'em up in trucking.
I mean, can you get enough of that song?
The song is in the movie like 5 times.
10-4.
Westbound and down, 18 wheels rolling. Eastbound and down.
They got their money out of this song for the movie.
Who's gonna hold your hat?
Eastbound and down.
Well, it was made for that.
Oh, sure.
So,
it was like when
yeah.
Huey Lewis made Back in Time for Back to the Future.
I still love that song.
Even though they only used that song, twice in the movie? Once when the radio...
End credits.
And once when the alarm came on.
When the alarm came on, and then when the alarm came on again. So they used it 3 times at least.
Was it used at the first alarm?
Yeah. Thought it was. At night, when he woke up at like midnight.
I think that's a different song on the soundtrack.
Challenge.
Cut to clip.
Michael made a wonderful discovery at Walmart and bought it. And we decided to play it in the background, but it reminded us of how good a movie it was, and we said, we just need to do a show.
I'm glad we did this. I like this plan. I'm excited to be a part of it. Let's do it.
We just need to do it.
Tim was the one that said, hey, why don't we just stop what we're doing? We're 3 minutes into this. We're enjoying ourselves too much. We know we're not going to get up. So let's just do a show on this. Smokey and the Bandit was there on 4K, brand new this past week.
Somehow that seems appropriate.
Yeah, it all felt like the energies of the cosmos came together to say, this is the time and place where you should buy this.
Well, it seems like that's the best retailer for this particular movie.
Absolutely.
I can say that. I'm from Alabama.
And we're in Georgia, so...
In Atlanta.
Yeah, so it's where the movie was filmed, and I thought, you know what? I've never owned this movie on any form of media. 4K is the last stop for 35 millimeter. It's maximum resolution. I thought, now is the time.
Yeah, and it was beautiful.
Oh my God, the restoration is gorgeous on this film.
So, yeah. And why they can't do that for others.
Right, like Born Identity.
Fifth Element.
Fifth Element looks bad.
But yeah, Born Identity.
Born Identity looks rough. But this one was given, clearly, all kinds of love and attention. Played it in HDR on a 75-inch TV.
That was wonderful.
Looks gorgeous.
What?
How long has it been since you've seen this movie?
From start to finish?
Yeah.
I mean, I see it on cable all the time, right? We see it on cable.
Yeah.
Especially when, unfortunately, Mr. Reynolds passed away. We saw it, endlessly.
Right.
But this is the first time I've sat down and watched it end to end since probably the early 90s.
Wow.
So it's been a long time, and I forgot how much I liked the movie.
I'll fully confess, it's been longer for me.
Oh.
I haven't seen this movie probably since the mid to late 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen this. Like, I've caught it on TV, but I was always about to run out, go do something, and then it was in the middle of the film, but I was always, we got to explain before we get started talking about the plot of this. We have to explain, Tim and I are both, even though he jokingly calls me a northerner, Tim and I both grew up in the mid to late 70s through the early 80s in the South of the United States.
Yeah.
This movie really set the standard. This is why The Dukes of Hazzard got made as a TV show.
Yeah, it had to be. I think you're right. There was so many things that led up to it that we thought about and were like, wow, I wonder if this was inspired by this.
Yeah.
And then to your point, there was almost an entire genre that kind of spun off of this type of movie.
Sure, yeah, because in '68, Steve McQueen did Bullet, which then made the car chase really popular. They immediately tried to get that onto television with shows like The Rockford Files and Chips and all that kind of stuff.
Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch, all those
that.
things.
Sugar Bear.
Right. So then this movie gets greenlit with Burt Reynolds, who at the time was the most highest paid actor in Hollywood.
In the United States.
Yeah.
Period.
Highest paid actor. He was the Harrison Ford of his day.
Yes.
And he comes out with this Smokey and the Bandit film. For kids in the South at that time, and then leading right off of this into Dukes of Hazzard, it's hard to describe how just seeing the filmmaking of this movie, hearing the soundtrack, these films, and by extension, the Dukes of Hazzard TV show, when you see it as an adult, it takes you back to that time of your childhood better. It will take you back to the 80s in where we lived better than anything else. Better than Empire Strikes Back. Better than Indiana Jones. Like, yeah, those give you like memory triggers of, being a kid and toys you played with. But remembering where you lived and what it was like and the smells and what the air looked like and what the
cars,
the hot dog stands where you
the
stopped, the restaurants.
What I always found interesting is how much we romanticized truck drivers in the 70s.
Oh yeah, especially when we were kids where we were.
Oh yeah.
With the CB radios and everything, it's huge. You know what other movie I think of when I see those kind of Georgia patrol cars? Tank.
Oh, that's another good. We need to do Tank.
We need to do Tank. Yeah.
Call Smith. Oh, where might I find the Bandit?
I ain't seen him.
Over there behind his rig.
See, that's why I like high-waisted jeans. That's why I like them.
All that stuff.
The Coke and Pepsi cans.
Yes.
I mean, just all of it.
Right.
And quite frankly, one of the things that has made us decide to do this was we actually were curious.
Yeah.
We asked ourselves a question. We were like, well, wait a minute. They were accused, the whole movie is about bootlegging. And we were like, but this was 77. We're like, alcohol was legal, but why would Coors beer coming from Texas to Georgia be considered bootlegging?
Right.
So we started digging.
Yep.
Trucking Coors beer east of Texas is bootlegging.
And we found out that there was a thing with the brewing of Coors beer.
Yep.
It was only distributed in like 4 states.
Or 11 states that were in the West or something like that.
Yeah, in the Southwest.
Yeah.
And because they did a process called cold brewing, the beer was not pasteurized like other beers. So it had to be refrigerated. It had kind of the shelf life of milk.
Right.
Which, silly me, I had no idea. I'm not a huge beer drinker, so I did not know this.
Right.
So that actually made it, because of, I think, food, FDA and all that, it ended up being illegal to take past.
Well, it sounded like the company agreed to it too.
Yeah,
they
were
did.
Like,
we don't want to take this west of or east of Texas. We just don't want it to go there.
So anytime you took Coors beer, it was considered bootlegging, and I think it really kind of turned into a thing because based on what I was reading, me and you were reading out loud, it became a sport for people.
Well, just a friendly bet. These 2 old boys, they put me up to it.
To do this in the 70s, like even presidents were sending Air Force One.
Yeah, to get Coors.
To get Coors beer and bring it back to the East.
Which, how is that not bootlegging?
No kidding.
Yeah.
But
double standard of the government.
The guy that wrote the movie was a stuntman, and he heard about the president at the time using Air Force One to do this bootlegging or whatever. It was considered a funny story, and he kind of put it all together with car chases and everything else because he, like I said, he's a stuntman, and he said this would be a great script.
Yeah.
And he wrote it, but to your point, I think the majority of the greatness of the movie had to be all the ad-libbing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because you can tell, there's no way they could have written.
No.
I got the metal to the pedal and the thing to the floor. And
just that banter between them, that to me, that doesn't come from a script.
No.
This is Frog. Hello, Frog. Won't you meet Fred, Frog?
hey, Fred.
This is for Fred. Frog, feed Fred.
No, some of that comes straight from some kind of ad lib and, just playing with lines. You can tell that the actors had a lot of fun doing this movie. You and I were commenting about the fact that, and we'll get to the plot here in a minute, but the way that they were able to write this in a lighthearted way This is not some edgy transporter movie.
Right.
It's not a movie where they're trying to say that, look how dangerous and look how these guys are criminals that are ruthless and they'll do anything to get this beer to make their 80 grand. And
Like a legend and an out-of-work bum look a lot alike, Daddy.
Oh, I love your suits.
it's just a kick back, have fun, enjoy the movie.
And let's acknowledge first that me and Michael do agree that it is a dated movie.
Right.
This is Sheriff George Branford of Gleason County, Arkansas.
I think one of the reasons that this movie has deftly avoided the pitfalls that other films have fallen into from this time period in the last 10 years, you know, as movies get reassessed and reevaluated. Right. And I said this while we were watching it, is that brief moment.
Hey, boy, where's Sheriff Branford?
Comes from the villain in the movie.
Very true.
And the villain is clearly a big blowhard, you know, butthead.
Bigoted.
He's a bigoted, stupid idiot, and he is the butt of every joke in the film. So he's meant to get, you know, the kick me sign put on his back. All of the main characters in the movie who are the heroes are constantly assisted by close friends of theirs who are all nationalities.
Yes.
Like, you have the Asian guy. He takes out the guy's door. You've got the
gravedigger.
The gravediggers who, you know, have the hearse going with the procession.
Bandit, this here is the grave robber. Put the pedal to the metal, good buddy.
And they know Bandit and all that kind of stuff. And like even in the bar scene with his buddy Cletus when he goes in to get a lunch.
Yeah,
or
the
something.
restaurant.
Yeah,
he's
clearly
the choke and puke, as they call it.
Yeah, he's very close friends with all. They all know each other. And
yes.
So it is limited to Jackie Gleason's character. And again, he's playing the bad guy. So, and he's an ignoramus.
Yeah.
So. You know,
and he gets what he deserves.
Oh, sure, sure.
Time and time again.
Yeah, this movie's all about comeuppance.
Daddy, the top came off.
But I mean, the lightheartedness is so interesting because, you know, we were kind of looking at it through the modern eyes, I guess you could say, of things, and the whole scene where. Sally Fields, they just got done at the restaurant.
You must be in a hell of a hurry, huh, Sheriff? Bet your ass on that boy.
Buford doesn't know who Bandit is. He buys his sandwich and everything, and then they run, and Sally Fields is driving the car.
Hey! What are you doing in my car? You're going the wrong way! Oh!
And they jump and end up on the football field full of children. And they're literally doing like 90 miles an hour towards children, and children are running, and they go through a stand. I'm sitting here going, today they would classify that as domestic terrorism.
Right.
I was like, you know, but whereas there, everybody's like, ha!
Yeah, look at that,
you know, and I'm just like, wow, how times have changed.
I keep admitting to myself that most of my tension watching this now comes from the fact that I know how expensive that car is today.
Right, yes, me too.
Yeah.
As to what's funny.
Right, because I was laughing because by that point in the movie, my brain had actually reset.
Yes.
Like, in other words, it was like, oh, remember when you
this
could
isn't serious.
It's not serious. Like, remember when you could just enjoy something?
Yes.
So the plot of the film, for those of you that don't know and don't mind being told, it's not a film that has spoilers per se. That's what's great about older movies is they're infinitely rewatchable and they don't hang on a twist.
Yep.
So the plot of the film is that Burt Reynolds is Bandit, and he is a guy who is doing like truck rallies and stuff. He's a driver that does truck stunts and things like that.
Truck rodeos.
Truck rodeos.
Which actually used to be a big thing back then.
I went to a few as a Tennessee boy.
Just what the hell you want anyway?
You to get out of this dumbass rodeo and accept a real challenge.
And so he's just hanging out at one of these truck rodeos, and everybody knows that he's this really,
show-offy,
daredevil kind of guy. And so these two smarmy businessmen come up to him with a proposition that
the stereotypical Southern businessman.
Yes, the ones in the really gaudy suits with the bow ties, and they look ridiculous. Which
big and little Enos.
Yeah, and I love the humor is immediate. Like, I know everybody loves to talk about, Joss Whedon and, changing dialogue and all that kind of stuff forever. And he's so smart with the witticisms. And it's like, have you seen Smokey and the Bandit?
Right.
Like, I feel like Smokey and the Bandit, that type of screenwriting, which really, in all fairness, goes all the way back to screwball comedies of the 30s.
Yeah, it does.
It was doing Whedon before Whedon was a thing. It's like people who didn't watch older films only watched Whedon at first, and they're like, he's so genius. And it's like...
It's hilarious.
It's like, look, he's a good writer, but he's a good writer because he follows the legacy.
Well, he's a good writer for one season. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah, he's a good writer for one season, but his style is an evolution of this, which is an evolution of the screwball comedy.
It must be a bitch getting a size 68 extra fat.
And he's, making fun of their appearance, and they're like, look, we want you to smuggle $80,000 worth of Coors beer from Texas
Texarkana.
Texarkana. Is that not literally?
It's a city in Texas.
That's what I thought. To Georgia. We want you to get that beer back to Atlanta.
Why do you want that beer so bad?
Because he's thirsty, dummy.
And he goes and convinces his friend Cletus, whose handle is not Smokey. That's the bad guy. Snowman.
Snowman. That's it.
Yep.
Snowman.
So you got Bandit, who goes to get his friend Cletus, who goes by the handle Snowman on the CB radio.
He's got his dog Fred.
Love
Fred.
Fred's a basset hound.
Yep.
Very chill. And he convinces him, because he doesn't initially want to do it, he convinces him, this will be a great run. We're going to make $80,000. And he's like, ooh. And so he decides, let's go do this. So they immediately set up this thing where he's already gotten the cash from the businessman to buy a truck and a really fast car.
New car. I got to have a new car to block for the truck,
Okay, go ahead, boy.
Speedy car.
Kills me that you could just pay cash for a car. And
I know.
Like it was nothing.
Gee, can't imagine why so many of us look back at better times and go, wish I'd been an adult then.
And he buys the Trans Am, and he buys the
Well,
big
he had
rig.
the truck. Him and Snowman ran the big rig together.
He had the truck.
But he wanted to buy a second one so they would both have...
a vehicle.
Yes.
Because he needed to be... The whole plan is he's going to put all the beer in the big rig, of course, and then with his sports car, he's going to try and distract the cops out front so that they don't pull over the truck and look at its manifest.
Yes.
So they drive to Texas.
Steal the beer.
Steal the beer because the guy isn't there yet to open it up for him to give him the beer. Because I don't think that was part of the plan. I
see. This is where we don't know. Because remember,
Right.
he said, write a note, send the bill to Big Enos.
Right.
So they just stole an entire warehouse of beer.
Was it stolen or earmarked for getting moved across the border?
Well, you heard him. He said we need to pay somebody for this beer.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, so does that mean they weren't expecting it and they just stopped there? Look, it's movie magic, right? Because...
But they said we're early.
Yeah.
So it implies that they didn't want to wait around for the guy to show up to rendezvous with them to take the merchandise. So they break in, they hijack a forklift, they smash up some of the beer, and then they put it all in the truck.
Paper and pen. I never thought that would be a lost world.
And then they take off because they want to make time because they've got an extra 28 minutes. They're 28 minutes ahead of schedule.
Yep, something like that, an hour or something
right.
like that, yeah.
And immediately, almost immediately, they're doing fine. No one's looking for them. They're doing fine. Burt Reynolds stops in the middle of the state road because there is a young woman with a just married car.
And a bridal gown.
And a bridal gown on. And she's like, get me out of here. And she jumps in the car and he's like, all right.
Sorry, I don't want to get married.
Terrific. That makes two of us.
They take off and immediately, I don't know where these guys come from, but immediately a GMC van pulls up out of a side road and just starts trying to strip the car of its parts. I'm like, where did these vultures come from? How How do you know?
In the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere. It's like, it's almost like they can sense it. You know, it's like, oh, hey, boy. I think a car just stalled on the side of the road.
They're on Highway 42 at mile marker 6.
Yeah, I can feel it. I know it. Let's go. That was weird, but I guess they needed that scene with the sheriff. But anyway.
Come here, son. Whoops.
So Sally Field plays Carrie, who they call Frog.
Yes.
Her real name, I think, in the movie's Carrie.
Was it Carrie? It was Carrie. Yeah, I think.
Because his name is what? Bo.
Bo,
and her name is Carrie.
I think so.
Yeah. They called Bo Duke. I'm telling you, they pulled elements from this to make Dukes of Hazzard. The people who saw this were like,
I guess they did.
I'm saying the people who saw this were like, ooh, what if we could get a Smokey and the Bandit show on TV? Because this was hugely successful.
Well, it was in the theater multiple times.
Yeah.
I mean, over like 3 years, it came out every summer.
Right.
You know, drive-ins. Yeah,
right.
I went to a drive-in many times, yes.
And instead of bootleggers, they were moonshiners.
Moonshine, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so anyway, she gets in the car.
Let me put it another way. Think of it as a wedding posse in search of a bride.
Suddenly you see the sheriff and his son, who's in a tuxedo, who's clearly just been ditched at the altar, and they're trying to get her back, but they don't know where she's gone, and they find her car on the side of the road being stripped by these teenagers with this van. Now, Tim and I, we were talking about this, and Tim made the good point. He said, you know, a modern movie like this would be called like Wrong Turn 3 or something, and it would be this real serious thing, because we've forgotten that movies can be entertainment without being realistic. Like, we're never going to tell our nieces, or in your case, your daughters or anything like that, we're never going to tell them, oh yeah, it's totally okay to jump into a strange person's car. But that doesn't mean that in a movie, it can't just be funny, lighthearted.
And we have to understand that this was the late 70s when this was made. The people who wrote the movie, the people who starred in the movie, they were 60s babies.
Right.
So, yeah, there was in the 60s a lot of hitchhiking and...
Yeah.
As the father of a daughter, you don't want your daughter getting in a car with a strange guy in reality. But it doesn't mean you can't make a movie where it's funny.
That was considered okay, and hitchhiking was considered a method of travel in the 70s. I do remember that being a thing. I remember my mom and dad stopping, picking up hitchhikers, saying, where are you going? Because my dad, you know, he grew up in the 60s. And they were like, oh, we're going to go to so-and-so. And he was like, well, I'll take you to so-and-so. I mean, I remember that being a thing. It wasn't until the 80s that we saw the fear kind of start to creep in about don't pick up strangers.
Right, right. Yeah, that was definitely an 80s to mid-80s thing.
Yeah.
But what I commented on at the time that Sally Field gets in Bandit's Trans Am is, this is great writing, because you have a very simple plot with a very simple complication.
Mm-hmm.
And the complication, of course, being that they have now just picked up, because Bandit is a daredevil who just flies by the seat of his pants. Whatever. They have now just picked up somebody who is being tracked by a sheriff. The one thing they didn't want instantly happens.
Was the heat.
Right. And at first, she's trying not to tell him, because he's like, why is there a sheriff on my tail? And he's on the CB with Snowman, back and forth, you know. He's trying to dodge the cops and stuff, and he's like, I don't know why they're on me. And he would look over at her and be like, do you know? And she's like,
yeah, I have no idea.
I have no idea.
What's a Texas County Mountie doing in Arkansas?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, who the hell knows?
I really don't know.
But you made a great point that I never considered until today. As many times as I've seen this movie on TV, growing up, he never knew that they were bootlegging.
Right.
He was oblivious to that. That was not what they were doing. He was just after the girl.
Right.
You said it. And
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
He has no idea that Snowman's even involved.
Right.
You've got a great profile.
Yeah, I do, don't I? Especially from the side.
They just don't know how to write like this anymore.
No, they don't. It's because it's all offensive.
Well, that's not offensive. That's almost screwball comedy level banter right there. You could have put that dialogue in a Cary Grant comedy in the 30s and it still would have played.
Now it's going to be triggered. She got in the car with a stranger.
Oh, yeah, I know. Now movies where a girl gets in a car like that has to be a tragedy or a horror film.
And because he's on the radio complaining about this guy that's, you know, clearly not really broken any laws or whatever, but he wants that girl back, he's alerted every sheriff's office from here to Atlanta, and so they keep running into problems they wouldn't have otherwise run into.
Hey, would a cop taking a leak on the side of the road interest you?
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
It's a simple plot with a simple complication that justifies all the action.
Yes.
And that's the thing, like, so many movies now, they overwrite their plot, and we sit back and go, oh, come on.
Well, they want it to be complicated, and they try to explain it in the first 10 minutes so they can get to the rest of the story, and it feels rushed, it feels contrived, it feels all those things, and you're kind of like,
right.
You know, you're kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, like Smokey and the Bandit, God forbid, but if Smokey and the Bandit was rebooted today, like remade, it would instantly start with it saying, Smokey and the Bandit, and then it would go kabloom, and then you just see a car racing somewhere with like 50 cop cars behind it. Instantly, like that's the first few seconds, and it's like, look at him, he's a badass driver, and he doesn't care. And it's like, they want to jump right to the action. But when you build, it only took 10 minutes for them to get to the plot.
Yeah.
And it's like, within 10 minutes, it's obvious that it's like, this character is cool, he doesn't really give a crap, he's willing to take risks.
They have a bet they got to do, but then they do this one thing that makes it complicated.
Makes it complicated. The one thing, but it justifies everything that happens afterward.
Is this fun?
I forgot to tell you, I'm running block here for 400 cases of illegal cruising.
It's genius. Like it's just really good writing. It's simple.
And I think the actors were happy making it.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually tell. You can tell when you watch the movie that the actors, even though they're acting, they're pretty generally happy when they're on screen. You can see them; they're actually happy.
Yeah.
So they've probably been given enough freedom in their ad-lib stuff to where to me that would be the mark of a good writer. Whatever, he's just like. In Star Trek, when they would write in the script, technobabble, and somebody would go make up the technobabble, it's almost like going to Sally Field and Burt going, look, y'all are going to be in the car. I just want you to talk about liking each other.
I think I just went 10-100.
No, it's better than 10-200.
That's
Figure it out. You
Right.
know? And they're like, heck yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do that all day long.
Right.
So it seems like it would be a fun movie to make.
It's like they had the plot lines, meaning the lines of dialogue that drove the plot forward, and they probably had they had dialogue.
Guidance.
Yeah, they had guidance, but it was probably like, look, here's what we have down on the script, but let's do a few takes and you play with it, and then we'll have some options. Like, say the script lines and then say a few other things. Like, there's that moment where she finally meets Snowman. They pull over on the side of the road.
Oh, yeah, by the lake.
By the lake, they all get out, and he's like, this is Snowman. She's like, hi, and he's like, this is Fred, and she's like, hi, and he's like, this is Frog, and he's like, oh, fine, and then like
and he's like, Frog, feed Fred.
Oh yeah, Frog, feed. Oh, that's right. He says,
and she's like, fine.
Yeah, it's very fast.
Cletus? Yeah. This is Frog.
Hello, Frog. Why don't you meet Fred, Frog?
Hey, Fred.
This is for Fred.
Frog, feed Fred.
Did he call her Bride?
Frog.
Why'd he call her Frog?
That's her handle. Remember, she wanted a handle in the chase, so he said, you're kind of cute like Frog, but don't jump around a lot.
Oh.
Frog.
Sorry, I was watching the Cars.
Frog.
Why?
Because you're always hopping around. And you're kind of cute like a frog, and I'd like to jump you.
It's so good. And there's moments like that throughout, like when she takes off in the car, why did he leave his keys in the car?
Well, me and you noticed things this time we never noticed before, like the scene the romantic scene, the one romantic scene where they're walking in the little, looks like a national park or whatever, and they're on that little wooden bridge. He clearly has something on under his shirt that goes all the way around, and I was like, is that his pants? I'm like, those are hugely high.
Right.
And then we saw his belt line, and we're like,
I guess
all the way around.
I guess it's possible, because he's still got a little bit of a punch there.
No.
What do you tell somebody, son?
No. Is it possible that it's a microphone pack?
I was wondering. That's
But it
what I was
goes
saying,
all
but it
the
goes
way
all the way around.
Unless that's how they secured it to him.
way of cutting through the bullshit.
But then where's the microphone? I would have thought they just boomed it like they do everything else.
So who knows?
I don't recall them having very portable microphone packs back then. They would have just boomed that for source sound, and then
they were right next to a water source.
ADR'd it anyway.
So maybe that's what it was, is they were booming it. They had some kind of other mic sitting on the ground that he's hooked to or something.
Maybe.
And then they decided, to your point, the water's too noisy, take all that off, we're going to have to studio that.
Right.
Or whatever. I mean,
it's hard to say. There was something in that one shot under his shirt, just for that one shot.
Well, it was the other thing, too. All of the shots of them in the Trans Am, something that I noticed late in the movie and we got talking about was, you know, we take for granted today that they've got cameras that are the size of your thumb that are HD cameras they use for dash cams and stuff. But they didn't have, I mean, the cameras back, movie cameras especially, back in the late 70s, they were huge.
Oh, yeah.
But yet we've got these shots close up of him. It looks like the camera's sitting on the hood.
Right, which it is.
Which it is, you said. But then I'm like, well, does that mean the windshield's out of the car? And I do notice her hair's blowing a lot.
But it's not blowing his hat off, which implies the windshield is still there.
So the windshield out of the car?
In some cases, in other cases, what they do is they put the car on a flatbed.
Yeah.
And then they have the cameras rigged up on the flatbed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But I'm guessing the windshield's out of the car. That's why her hair's blowing as bad as it is.
By the time they got from Bullet, I mean, because they were doing shots like that in the 50s and 60s on cars, but when they got to Bullet and Grand Prix and movies like that, they were quickly mastering how to film real driving cars. One of the biggest points of movie magic in this, which is one of the most famous aspects of the movie period, is how indestructible this car is. Which, you know, they jump this broken bridge, and you immediately said,
"Man, that car's ruined." I mean, that was so high.
Great jump, though.
Oh yeah, beautiful jump.
Beautiful jump.
Beautiful landing.
Better than anything, and don't torch me for this, but they had a budget. It was a big budget movie. That jump was more beautifully executed than anything in Dukes of Hazzard. I mean, and Dukes of Hazzard had some great jumps, but that jump was just perfectly executed. Yeah. I mean, it was perfect.
But then the next scene, the car looks washed. The rims are spotless.
Yeah.
There's not a mark on the Trans Am anywhere.
Right.
And they bust through a chain link
fence or a chain link barrier.
Yeah, barrier.
They bust through, they run over like 5 mailboxes at one point. Yeah. It's like whatever. They drive through that dugout.
Yeah,
or no,
through the creek.
Or the bleachers. They
drive
through
those bleachers.
The bleachers.
And if you notice when they were going forward, it looked like a cinder block wall, but then it was just lattice work.
Right.
It's hilarious and we see this because we do this for a living.
No debris falls on them.
Yeah, no debris.
There's no roof, you know.
You smoke much?
I just started.
Sally Field should have a nail on a board through her head, you know, at this point.
There are no tires on this car left after this is over.
No kidding.
It should have been like a rambling wreck by the time it gets to the end, but it's not, because this was the era in which cars were magic.
So Kit being one of them, right? Kit was a magic car because, remember, they even tried to explain it in the 80s because he had that special armor that made him indestructible, and they were like, oh, that's how we're hanging a lantern on the fact that every time you see this Camaro, it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But that was this movie, because like in Bullet, his car gets torn up realistically and trashed. This movie almost, I want to say Rockford Files kind of made the car magic too a little bit on TV.
Yeah, they did, yes.
Yeah. But this movie, it was probably one of the first real star cars. Like, it was, to my mind.
I actually agree. Well, Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah.
That big old red, white monster they drove. Right. I mean, it was... Yeah. I remember having a Hot Wheels version of that, but not to the... I think probably what you're pointing at is the longevity of the popularity, because that car to this day is still considered legendary, whereas Kid is considered obscure.
Right.
All those others, Rockford Files, everybody else, even the Fall Guys truck is considered obscure. Yet the Trans Am to this day is still considered an icon.
Right.
To your point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That's a burned out transmission right there.
We had a guy when I worked at UPS who had one just like this that was his Bandit Trans Am, and he would keep it in the corporate parking garage even though he had another car to drive to work. He didn't have a place to safely store it.
So he stored it in that concrete bunker.
And he would just move it around so that security wouldn't. It was like, how come security hasn't nabbed you?
So
for
you
this?
had the Bandit car, then you had the DeLorean. At some point, all together in.
Yes.
That's actually pretty freaking awesome.
It was something else. It was a sight to see. Yeah.
I would love to see that.
So most of the movie, I should say all of the movie, minus the bumpers at the beginning and end, the frame story, it's just one long car chase with only a few interludes. It's a very, very simple script that allows for a lot of hijinks.
The fact that you are a sheriff is not germane to the situation.
The goddamn Germans got nothing to do with it.
One of my favorite moments in this movie is where she asks him, do you ever take that hat off?
Don't you ever take that hat off for anything?
Sure. I take it off for one thing, and one thing only.
Oh.
And then later on, when Snowman's trying to get him on the radio, it cuts to the CB antenna on top of the Trans Am, and his hat is hanging from it.
Well, every movie has an acid trip sequence, so I guess that's this.
So we know now what's going on.
It's been implied.
Right.
It's happened.
It's happened. All of the banter, like I'm not...
But in a very PG way.
In a very PG way. This was a movie where they said, we want everybody to be able to go to this. To take their kids to enjoy the car chases and all that stuff.
Get Daddy a beer, which... That was the 70s.
Which was a 70s thing. I remember what the smell of beer was from the age of 4 or 5 without ever having really had any until,
Oh, I mean, my father was a Southerner.
Yeah.
Even though he was a Navy man and we moved around. From Alabama, we moved back to Alabama when he retired. And he was a beer man. And it was, Tim! And I would be in my room playing my Transformers. I'd be like, damn it. Because I knew there's only one of two things he was calling me in the living room for. One, to go get him another beer out of the fridge. Or two, change the channel because none of us had remote controls back then.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, change it to channel 4. It was, change it, and you'd be like, click, and you'd have to sit there, and he'd be like, change it, and you'd be like, click. Go back, click.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. Click. I mean, that was the 70s.
Oh,
man.
yeah, it was. Totally was.
And that was your job as a kid.
There's a lot of energy in this script, and it comes from it. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when the shark in Jaws didn't work all the time during that movie.
Right.
So they had to keep the cameras rolling. They just kept writing character scenes. So you have like the scene where, he crushes the can and then Richard Dreyfuss crushes the paper cup.
The styrofoam cup. It's so great.
I sense a lot of that in this movie too. Not that anything wasn't working, but that they were like, this movie is going to be about characters with this car chase around them.
I just go from place to place and do what I do best.
What's that?
Show off.
You're going to get to know them through this car chase.
You're going to love them.
Yeah, you're going to love them. It's not something where the whole movie is just this chase and a bunch of clever one-liners.
And look how good a driver that person is.
Yeah.
Don't you stay there. Let's go get him.
Drives pretty good, don't he, Sarge?
Let's see about that.
It's interesting, and I don't know if it's a sign of the times or, again, Hollywood eating its own tail, but I feel like movie stars today, movie and TV stars, are such prima donnas that they don't enjoy what they do most of the time, so the effort that goes in there is pretty minimal, which gives us a lot of the bad stuff we see today.
Right.
But I really feel that kind of movie, it's people having fun, and it's people that do like each other.
Yeah.
And they are friends. I mean, that's why in the second one of the best things is when
Dom DeLuise?
Dom DeLuise comes in as the Russian doctor, who's clearly not a Russian doctor. I mean, Cannonball Run 1 and 2. I mean...
Stroker Ace.
Yeah, I mean, but just seeing the banter between those two, even though Mel Gibson's a little wackadoo, seeing him and Danny Glover together, we don't find that magic like that anymore. And I don't know why.
Well, like I was with you. I've never been a huge Sally Field fan.
Right.
I don't dislike her, but I just don't gravitate toward her movies. But in this movie, with the energy around the cast, and she contributes to it greatly, like, all props to her. She is a dynamic and enjoyable part of this movie. This is probably the one Sally Field movie that I really like.
I completely agree. I love her early work, but once you get into the late 80s where she tried to do more drama, I wasn't a fan anymore. But that's just because I'm not a big dramatic fan, movie fan. I mean, I'm not saying she's bad in any way, but the silly, young, spunky, witty Sally Field we got in here was great.
Yes, have a smoke. It seems to help.
Yeah, it played to strengths that sadly she hasn't used a lot of since then. This is what you could have been, you know, like.
Very true.
But she, you know, wanted to chase Oscars and do whatever, which is fine, you know, whatever. But I loved moments in this with all the characters that showcased how when you had smart writers, you could use moments or what we call it, activating moments of character business to inform you of who these people were.
Yes.
So one of our favorite scenes in the movie that we both discovered as we were watching it was when Snowman gets beaten up in the bar. Tell them the rest of this.
Well, no, it's great because I mean, you know, you feel so bad for the guy because he comes out and his eye is all swollen and he's bloody and he's just like, and you're just like, oh man, not Snowman, you know. But when he gets, you know, the guy comes out and he's like, I'm so sorry, Snowman. And he gives him a hug and he's like, it's all good. And he gets in the truck. And the minute he starts the truck, he's like, but he just goes, and then just runs over all their motorcycles. And just destroys them.
Because he's in an 18-wheeler, so he just runs them all over. In a modern movie, like go all the way to 89, 90, and that character is Sam Elliott getting killed in Roadhouse.
Yes.
Now again, I'm not dogging on Roadhouse. I know it's a great movie, but Roadhouse. But what I'm saying is, in the modern sensibility, I firmly believe that if they were to rewrite Smokey and the Bandit, that character would be killed in the bar.
Yeah.
And then Smokey would find out, and he'd be like, 10-4. And then he'd like click the thing down.
Or Bandit would.
Bandit would. Sorry, Bandit.
And then it would become a revenge movie.
Yeah, Bandit would say, you know, they killed Snowman.
You don't know who I am, but I have a very specific set of skills.
Or like whoever it is in the passenger seat, you know, the latest. It's probably by this point it'll be Millie Bobby Brown, and she'd be like, you know, and he's like, we're going back. You know,
well, if it was her, she would have had superpowers. And just being a ninja.
Different franchise.
And
different franchise.
Sorry, my bad.
There's no way that you could come from my loins. Soon as I get home, the first thing I'm gonna do is punch your mama in the mouth.
So it would be like her, and who would play Burt Reynolds? It would be like.
Oh my God! I don't know that anybody could play Burt Reynolds.
They'd probably put a mustache on Tom Holland and be like, "You're Bandit," or they would get Henry Cavill and put his mustache back on and be like, "You're Bandit." Don't get excited about that. Don't.
I kind of like Cavill though.
But I'm telling you, they would kill Snowman, and then he'd be like, you know, and she'd be like, and you'd hear the, and he's like, "They've killed my friend." And this movie is lighthearted. With some serious moments, but it's like the part where they peel away in the car from the diner, not knowing how he left his keys in the car, because that was our question. Why would he leave his keys in that shiny Trans Am? And she's in the driver's seat because she's trying to get away from Sheriff Buford. And then they try to switch seats, and there's this moment which has to be ad-lib, where she's trying to climb over him.
Coming over underneath you, you just slide right on over. Just slide.
You're just like,
Which, I mean, you don't. I'm not saying writers aren't talented enough to write that line. And if they did, I apologize in advance for thinking this, but that sounds like just a clever improv.
Which makes me love her even more. Because it was just hilarious.
And if it isn't an improv, then she sold it so well as to sound spontaneous, all the credit still goes to her for it.
And can we talk about Junior?
We can talk about Junior.
Because we don't know what his name is. Mm-hmm. He has practically no lines other than "Daddy."
He's a moron.
She assaulted my authority.
Yeah.
And that's nothing but pure and simple old-fashioned communism.
But talk about pulling it off.
Sure.
I mean, just nailing the whole thing.
He's gormless. He is.
It's hilarious, though.
Oh, sure, but
put the evidence in the car.
What was his whole thing? How would he even convince a woman like Carrie to marry him? Like,
well, you heard her say he's tall, he had a hat on, and he was gorgeous.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, he's a handsome man, I guess, for back then, if you look at him, until he opens his mouth. And then you're like, oh, right.
Right.
But, you know, I mean...
Right.
In the second one, she's going to marry him again. So you haven't seen the second one, have you? See, Michael has not... You know what? We're going to do a show. We're going to do a show. I'm going to bring Smokey and the Bandit 2.
Oh, do you own it?
No. Well, I think I own it on streaming.
Because I'll just get it on Blu-ray.
I think I own it on streaming.
Physical
we're gonna
media.
have to.
Physical
No,
media.
I agree. I completely agree with you. We're gonna watch it and do a show because you have not seen the second one. I think you need to see the second
If I saw the second one, it was back in the 80s, and I saw it on TV or something.
Do you remember the big chase scene in the desert with all the trucks and all the police cars?
That's the only vague. Don't tell me anything more.
Okay.
That's the vaguest memory I have.
That's the second.
Okay. I was a little disappointed that the second one wasn't remastered along with the first one for a 4K.
Yeah, I don't know.
They do that. They eke these things out. They're like, well, this one was our moneymaker. And then they...
Did they... And was it... Okay. No, it was Cannonball Run 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Smokey and the Bandit 2 were actually filming at the same time. And since they're both in it, they were using some of the same things and sets and places. Was it that? Don't quote me. I got to go back and research that. But I think those were being filmed at the same time.
Can we talk about the fact that there's a moment early on in the film where Burt Reynolds stares at the camera and practically winks and smiles and drives off? What was that all about?
Wow. Breaking the fourth wall.
And he never does it in any other part.
No, he never does it in the rest of the film.
But I love it.
I mean, yeah, it's funny, but it's like what is he doing? Is he just kind of saying, "You having fun, audience?" Like this is
I don't
fun.
know. Him being Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know because he was a funny guy.
Yeah.
At least till he got older.
Oh, sure.
But I don't know. I don't know why they would do that and do it once and
right.
You don't hear it.
He's. I guess Burt Reynolds is the kind of guy who's funny on camera, but off camera he's kind of. Wasn't he just kind of a?
Well, I heard when he was younger he was actually really funny. It was when he got older that he was just really like
gruff and.
Yeah, he was very Sean Connery.
Very Harrison Ford, like.
Very Harrison Ford when he got older, and grumpy, but I don't know why. I mean, I think Boogie Nights was the next thing he did,
which was his one Oscar nomination, and he didn't win.
And I don't think that movie just makes you feel...
Well, Burt Reynolds didn't want to do that movie.
Really?
His agent told him, you should really do this movie. And yeah, he was excited because he got an Oscar nod for it, but then after the Oscar nomination didn't materialize, didn't pan out, he went back to his feelings of, because he and that director, from what I understand, Paul Anderson, they did not get along. Like,
I mean, I can see why.
Yeah, he was not happy being on that production. And coming off of productions that look this fun, I can understand why. Like, who wants to suddenly do a movie? But his agent was like, you got to do this. And yeah, he was great in it because he's a really good actor and he got an Oscar nod. But
it was not Burt Reynolds.
It was not Burt Reynolds
to us. Yeah, it was not.
And it
what
was,
he was.
It was dirty because when they did the at the Academy Awards, when they do the reels for nominated for Best Performing Actor, Best Actor,
Best
whatever,
Supporting Actor,
Best Supporting Actor, and they show like the clip from the movie. They show the moment where he's sitting there editing one of those pornographic movies with his editor, and he's like, "This is the film I want to be remembered for." Oh, no. And it's like, that's his character saying that about a porn movie. I don't think Burt Reynolds in his wildest imaginations ever wanted to be remembered for that. He owned this car from the movie. Like, he wanted to be remembered as this fun guy that like made these,
I agree. Yeah,
you know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my favorite part of the movie.
I miss these kinds of movies. They're fun to watch.
Yeah.
On a Saturday afternoon, it's very nostalgic.
Yeah. I don't even think as close an equivalent as it is. I don't even think Gone in 60 Seconds hits this level.
No.
It tries to be too edgy and dangerous.
I love the movie for what it is, but it's not this.
It's not this. No.
It's not. There's not the same amount of talent in that movie as there is in this movie.
Yeah. It doesn't even come close. And having legends like Jackie Gleason in it playing the villain and
Ever raise your voice to me? Do you know who you're talking to?
You'll see Enos from Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, that's what I knew. I knew that scene was coming up, and I made the comment. I was like, "Oh, we know who this is." And as soon as he opened his mouth, Michael goes, "Oh."
Howdy, officer. How you doing? Give me your license manifest, boy.
Is that Enos?
I didn't know you damn right you was. I know it's got doing that 6 miles an hour.
No wonder they cast him in Dukes of Hazzard.
Is that Enos?
It's Enos.
He's
in the film. And there's a number of people in the film that just kind of pop in and out. And
I'll be with you in a moment, young man. Bandit, honey, this is the Good Witch of the North speaking.
It shows that you don't have to overwrite a film. What you're supposed to do is write a plausible scenario, throw a complication in the character's way, and allow all of that to motivate the audience learning who the characters are.
And make it feel natural.
Yes, right.
Don't make it feel forced.
Forced.
That's a big...
Yeah.
Big
There's only one part of this movie that feels forced.
Yeah.
And poorly acted. And it's the two cops on the side of the Georgia highway trying to improv what they did the night before. And it's
stereotypically bad.
Man, she's looking good. I'd like to take a run on her.
Oh, man, what are you talking about?
She makes herself a bachelor.
Hey, you two guys, do some improv. We're not good enough actors to do that. All right, we'll try. In fact, that's the only bad acting I've seen in this movie.
Yeah, it really is.
It reminded me, though not nearly as bad, but it reminded me of the National Guardsman in First Blood, where that movie had a tone.
Yeah.
And then that tone's not this movie's tone. But all it takes is a few hammy actors or bad line deliveries to just kind of hit the brakes on the plot. And that's what happens in First Blood with those guys. And then in this movie, thankfully, it's a very brief scene, but it's like, oh, those guys.
Well, one thing I'll give it, though, is at least they hired regional people to be the actors in the movie because the accents are real.
Mm-hmm.
The way they talk is now. There's a few forced ones in there that's obvious.
Right.
I think Hot Pants. I don't think she was from the South.
No. She had lines.
She had lines, and she tried the accent.
And who wants to know?
This is a Bandit, darling.
Well, where are you, you bodied up, smooth-talking thing? And how can I help?
I loved the ending.
Oh, yeah.
The ending where he's literally right next to him on that CB radio.
Son, you make them look like they're all running in slow motion.
Just want to say that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bandit.
What would happen in a modern take of this? He would tell him that he's the big...
Look over your shoulder.
No, he wouldn't do that in the modern one. In the modern one, he would say, yeah, I'm the guy who's standing next to the really short guy, you can't miss me. And then he'd be like, oh, and he'd drive off over there. That guy would get arrested, get his comeuppance as a bootlegger, and he would drive off into the sunset being like, haha, look how I got one over everybody.
Man.
Yeah, I got one over on everybody. In this movie, he's like, no,
I can't do it to you,
I can't
Sheriff.
do it to you, Sheriff.
Wait a minute.
Scratch that, hold it.
I can't lie to you, Sheriff. You're too good a man.
Look over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And he's like, oof.
He's like, and we're headed to Boston or Jersey or something like
for
that.
Clam chowder.
For clam
New England.
chowder.
We're going to England for some clam. Boston
for some clam chowder. And then they take off again.
In the El Dorado.
Yes. Which is an odd choice for the... Why did he have...
Cadillac.
I guess he abandoned the Trans Am because he could be found in it.
Yeah, they knew what to find him in.
Right.
He's like, I need a car, and he's like, take mine. And
Well, look, we need two things. We need a way out of here, we need the money.
Well, here's my Cadillac. That'll leave me with an even dozen.
the Cadillac Eldorado, I mean, that is a classic car in the South, unfortunately.
It is.
You know, especially in the 70s.
My
everybody wanted a Cadillac.
My aunt and uncle who have a farm in northern Tennessee in the 80s.
They had their pickup trucks, but then they had the Cadillac in the garage.
In the garage. Yes,
that was a very Southern thing. I'm sure other parts of the country are the same, but especially in the South in the late 70s, early 80s, my grandparents had the same car.
Mm-hmm.
They had farm equipment. They were farmers, and they had trucks and other things. But in their garage was their Cadillac. And it only got driven to church.
Yep, every Sunday.
Every Sunday. That's where it went, and that was a real thing.
This is the car that delivers us to God every Sunday. Drives us home.
And it was that red.
Yeah.
It was that red that's in the movie, too.
My aunt and uncle's was white.
Gotta love it. And it probably had the red interior, though, did it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hood ornament.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Cadillac was GM, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, they had those metal belt buckles that burned you every summer. It's like,
oh my God,
it's so hot.
State of adventure? How come we don't have that as our slogan anymore?
What is our slogan?
I don't know, but it's not state of adventure. I know that much. Oh, it's that whole "we know we're on your mind" or something like that.
George is on your mind.
Yeah, weak. That's weak sauce. Now that's a stunt. That's impressive.
We jumped over that bridge! We did that! Did you see what we did?
Yes, I did.
I would have jumped something else!
I'm so glad that I picked this up.
I'm so glad we decided to watch it today.
Yeah, this was fun. This was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
And for those of you that haven't seen it, who happen to be our age, what are you waiting for?
I'm like, really?
Oh, yeah, like, go
and
see
if you
this.
hate it, I understand. Like I said, there's a lot of reasons to hate it. I get it. I understand.
The dialogue alone between all the main characters
is so good.
Is so good. Between Bandit and Frog, Sally Field, and Snowman, it's gold. Like it's so good.
Hot damn, we're gonna make it.
All right. Well, now I wish I had a Trans Am. And
yeah, I'm actually going. Maybe I go and get the train. You got the DeLorean. Maybe I'm the one who gets the Trans Am.
Have you seen the prices on those?
Well, maybe I find one in a barn somewhere.
Be easier to work on. I'll sell the DeLorean for restoration money for the Trans Am.
Once it's fixed,
yeah.
I have faith that one would keep running.
Oh yeah, me too. That's why I'm like, maybe I give up on my dreams of an Aston Martin.